Greetings, traveler. I bid you listen closely and enjoy what is to come.
Hi, everyone must have had a bad experience, and everyone must have different responses to bad events that have been experienced. Some people, when they experience bad events, become normal. There are also those who become sad for a while, or there are also those who become traumatized and become afraid or anxious about various things related to the incident. Well, how do you feel about the bad experiences that you have experienced? Maybe some of you become afraid when you have to deal with things related to the bad experiences that you have experienced, because it does feel like when we remember bad experiences, you could say that we are not very comfortable feeling it. The problem is that the impact is that we become nervous. We become excessively panicked, anxious, or even develop phobias when we feel uncomfortable like this. Well, the question is, can we change our behavior after we have quite or bad events in the past? Well, it turns out that an American psychologist has talked about this problem called as John B. Watson. He is one of the evolutionary psychologists who founded the Behaviorism school in this video. I will explain. Who is John Watson? What is his theory? And how can that theory help you to be better? So you watch this video until the end, and don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss other videos from the good 1%. So who is John Watson? What makes Wasn't Me famous? Like that, John B. Watson, who is usually shortened to John Watson, is a psychologist from America. Watson is known as the father or folder of the school of psychology called behaviorism. This school of behaviorism brought huge changes to our psychology, especially after he wrote an article entitled Psychology as the Beaver's Physique. Watson have a quite different view from the Coin School at that time. Why at that time usually focus on thoughts, emotions, motivations, subconscious, and so on, which actually the things that I mentioned earlier cannot be seen with the naked eye, right? Yes, if the subconscious cannot be like that, right? Well, if you have watched the Freud video before this, you must realize that Watson's theory is the exact opposite of the front theory. Watson actually considers that things like subconscious emotions and all the things that happen in our minds that we cannot see directly cannot actually be made into basic why. Because what cannot be seen and observed directly is not scientific, things like this, according to Watson, are not important to see. That's why he created a new school of psychology, a school where psychology only focuses on seeing high. So all the things that we cannot see, such as the subconscious mind and so on, are considered not psychological science that should be focused on. Maybe there are, but not necessarily. We don't have to focus on it. Watson said that the thing that should be focused on is only something that is visible. That's the reason why the name of his school is behaviorism. There is the word beaver, which means, okay, we focus on behavior. Behaviorism actually believes that human behavior with its formed personality comes from experiences that arise from the environment. What does that mean? So we as humans do not get our behavior from genetic factors, from subconscious factors, from any factors, but from the experiences that we get when we interact with the environment. So there is something called talent that is obtained from birth, or talent that is obtained from genes, that leads to the development of human behavior, habits, and a personality according to behaviorism are only formed from our experiences with the environment. That's why Watson himself actually said one of the most famous and very controversial sentences in his time. He said something like this: "Give me a healthy baby, and I will guarantee that I can become a great person in India in any field." So wasn't this said that if I get hurt, I'm a healthy baby? He will be able to make the baby a great person in any field, Watson continued, saying that I can make him a doctor, a lawyer, an artist. Even W can train him to be a thief, no matter what his talents, tendencies, or what race the baby is like. So it doesn't matter what his genetic factors are like. As long as the baby is healthy, Watson said that he can change the baby into anything he wants. This statement indicates that Watson believes in the environment as the biggest factor that shapes human behavior. So if, for example, you now feel that you are good at math or vice versa, you are not good at math, or you feel you are good at playing games or you can't play games at all, Watson will say that actually this comes from the environment. But Worth will also say that you can definitely change something that is powerful metal to be capable like that. Why is that? Because you just stay in this condition through the environment, right? And vice versa, those who are good can also be changed to not being crazy good through the environment. The point is that everyone can change from not being good at something, from being good to not being good, as long as the person is conditioned to change from their environment. The key word is conditioning, so whatever the weakness is, as long as you are conditioned to change, you can definitely change. Well, what's interesting is What's On finally did a very controversial experiment, which actually, if the experiment was done now, he would be VCY, because this experiment is dangerous and violates ethics. So how is that what experiment was done? Well, Watson did an experiment on a baby named Little Albert to prove that all humans can actually be conditioned and their behavior can be changed according to what he wants. This is where a very interesting historical event happened, right? Even though it actually sounds scary, it was about the experiment on Albert. So Watson did an experiment to instill fear, which he tried to do to a good one named Albert. Albert was only 19. Well, what was tried on Albert initially, Albert was given a small white mouse, this mouse. Actually, it doesn't mean anything to Albert. So every time Albert sees this mouse, at first Albert is normal. But every time Albert wants to hold the mouse, Watson always conditions Albert to hear this very loud sound behind his head. And this is done continuously. Every time there is a mouse, we are given a loud sound. There is a mouse, we are given another loud sound. Another mouse appears. We are given another loud sound until finally this conditioning makes Albert hesitate to hold a white mouse. And the impact is that Albert always cries hysterically and moves away when given a white mouse. Well, the worst effect is the impact on other things. The impact is when Albert is given other objects that are also white, even though they are not mice, for example, a white rabbit doll, a white fur jacket, all white items. Albert also gives a similar response, just like when he saw a white mouse. Albert cries, he becomes scared, nervous, and panics. This conditioning on the helmet has a bad impact on Albert. Albert has to grow up with fear against various white objects until he grew up. Well, this experiment is now actually considered to be a violation of ethics because, of course, it has a bad impact on the baby until he grows up. But the wisdom is that what we can learn is that apparently this conditioning works. This experiment illustrates that humans can actually be conditioned, and their behavior can be changed based on the conditioning that is done. Now we know the conditioning that was done to Albertini as the classical conditioning theory. So you can search on the internet about classical conditioning, and Albert, for example, okay, Pop. But why did Albert become afraid, nervous, and panicked? Why did he become afraid of various white objects with this experiment? Well, this fear, nervousness, panic actually appeared because there was an association from a bad experience that was obtained from things around Albert. Albert always got a loud noise, and one side of the bad experience could even be said to be a traumatic experience because it was always repeated, right? And it was associated with the presence of mice white ready. In white mice, yes, loud sounds appear like that. There are also several other factors that, according to Watson, can reduce the level of fear, nervousness, and panic of a person towards something first. Usually a bad experience, if, for example, long amend bad experience and high intensity, for example, ones like that. But very intense can be, you will be overly afraid. For example, see that person in emblems whose wounds are really bad? Yes, you can be overly afraid of my emblem, compared to if the person who saw it was taken only had minor injuries. Second, can also be our behavior of avoiding what we fear it. In fact, it actually increases our fear. Why is it like that? Why does avoiding make us afraid like that? For example, like this. Have you ever been bitten by a dog, then every time you see a dog, you immediately run away without trying to face your fear? If it's like this, then you will not experience an incident where you meet a dog again and the dog is normal. Like that doesn't do anything. Well, if, for example, you have never experienced meeting a dog and the dog is good, yes, your feelings towards dogs will be afraid like that. Well, that's some of the reasons why we can be afraid. So how do we overcome excessive fear, nervousness, or panic caused by bad experiences? Well, before I tell you how to attack, I want to tell you that One Role has counseling services with psychology that can be one way to help you overcome fear, anxiety, and bad events that you have experienced that may now interfere with your birth activities. And especially this counseling can actually help if, for example, this fear and anxiety have persisted for more than 2 weeks. The symptoms have lasted for more than a week. You feel that it is interfering with your life. In this counseling, what will you get? Well, there is free assessment counseling that will see what blue looks like. There is also interpretation of test scores so that you can get to know yourself more deeply. You will also get a consultation with a licensed professional. You will also be able to consult with a professional psychologist. And at the end of the session, the psychologist will usually give you group assignments to help you solve the problems you are experiencing. For registration, you can click on the counseling link that I have put in the description and in the comment section. Well, let's continue to the material. How do we overcome the fear of nervousness or panic that we feel, especially through techniques in the behaviorism stream? Well, first, if you can do the counter-conditioning technique, I already mentioned about conditioning. Well, now how do we go to counter-conditioning if you feel that you are experiencing the same thing as Albert, for example, experiencing an unpleasant incident? And that makes you associate those things with events around you. Just like Albert, yes, the association and fear of white objects. You can actually learn to change that fear response to no longer be afraid of God, reassociating things that you initially associated negatively with something positive. So Lotus can actually create a condition where the things you are afraid of no longer create a negative impact for you, but have a positive impact. For example, how? For example, you always anxious when you want to speak in front of many people because you have had a bad experience? Well, if possible, try to associate speaking in public no longer with bad experiences, but with positive things. If you can eat your favorite food before you come to the room, if you can listen to your favorite songs, if you can watch something funny for you or anything that you think is positive before speaking in public, so that you are not afraid of things related to speaking in public, you can try to do something positive in the room where you want to speak positive things. Like what? For example, chatting with people in the room. You can eat together with friends and many other things. But of course, this is not instant and may need to be gradual so that later you can be more relaxed and associate things that were initially negative to positive, so that the second suggestion, because this is not instant, remember to face your fear step by step. Watson had done this with Albert. After he experienced the trauma earlier and also several others who experienced phobias. So what does step by step mean? So in step by step therapy, for example, people are afraid of something, they will slowly be exposed to things that make them afraid. So for example, if someone is afraid of spiders, first of all, to overcome their phobia, that person will be asked to look at a photo of a spider first. So look at the photo first. After looking at it, or if they are calm, looking at the photo, they can be asked to use virtual reality to see the spider more realistically. If they are calm, for example, DVR, after that, the person who is afraid of spiders can be asked to enter the room. Then they are asked to hold a box that contains a spider. Well, if they are calm after holding the box is open. If they are calm, they will definitely open the spider. Finally, they are allowed to come out and hold it. Maybe this is the process that is usually done when people experience phobias. When people are afraid, they are usually given treatment. This therapy is step by step like this. In modern therapy, this can usually be done using virtual reality. So for example, people who are afraid of heights. Therapy by being told to look at the height of the DVR until finally feeling calm and trying to increase the intensity again, increasing it continuously until finally the person doesn't feel afraid anymore. The second and third, we can train your body to stay in a state of, indeed, if, for example, you are afraid, according to Watson, phobia and panic can actually be influenced by physical factors, and usually this worsens the symptoms. Why is it? Because we become nervous, we become sweaty, trembling, have stomach aches, and our breathing is irregular. This worsens the symptoms of panic and our phobia symptoms. Well, if you can, try to relax, namely regulating your breathing to reduce nervousness and regular breathing. You can also try yoga or meditation if you have free time. Why is this important? Because it makes you more aware when your body starts to show the signs that were mentioned earlier. Okay, for example, panic, anxiety, and nervousness. Because meditation and yoga are closely related to self-awareness. Or in other words, it makes you play full. So when God later gets certain symptoms, you can aware, oh yes, this is just a symptom, and moreover, calm down finally if possible. Always remember that we can always change for the better. That's important. Hi, everyone. Let's condition it properly, because with the right environmental conditions, we will be able to change ourselves to be better according to the changes we want. So yes, from earlier, we have discussed a lot about the theory of behaviorism and various treatments for trauma and anxiety, and also fear of bad experiences that have happened. Well, if, for example, you feel disturbed because of anxiety, feeling like you have experienced trauma and it interferes with your full proactivities, you can try to join the counseling service from 1%, where later you will be able to consult with a psychologist. You will also get a psychological test interpretation. You will also get an assignment in the form of a worksheet that is tailored to the problem you are experiencing. To register, you can click the link in the description or in the comments section that I have penned. Yeah, maybe that's all in closing. I hope this video can make you better support 1% Everyday K, Bevan, from 1%. Thanks, I hope you